Hi, I'm Sneegh. I'm shy. The story's called A Spider's Princess. Chapters 1 and 2. We get 2 and 1. Somewhere deep in the forest of Teldrassil lay a dark, foreboding cave with ominous webbing that was clearly not made by your average spider. It was absolutely forbidden for travelers to go there, but the world needs adventurers, and the latest brave, or foolish, adventurer to go was a rather busty Draenei, Alarivi. Of course, someone had to tell her about the cave, and knowing the drill, she figured that if she went and slew whatever evil was inside, blah blah blah, some gold coins and a new slutty piece of armor would be given to her. Alarivi was a well-trained warrior who wore nothing but a chainmail top that covered her breasts and a skirt made from the same material, that exposed her nether lips to the air and elements, and, of course, wandering eyes. She also kept a large battle axe on her back, but that was mostly for show. The Draenei made her way through the forest after hearing about the cave and how nobody went there. It had enticed her curiosity, and without being able to sleep, the warrior just had to go and visit. But she would soon find the forest growing dark. The trees started to look dead, and whilst looking backwards, thinking of whether or not she could return home, she was promptly caught in a tangle of large webs. She spun and struggled, unable to break from the newfound captivity. A sharp pain shooting up her right leg, but the world around her became a dizzy blur. The last thing she remembered seeing was 8 green yet clear legs. When Alarivi awoke, she would found herself suspended above a cluster of pale green eggs, and the more she looked around, the more she realized that not only was she in a cave owned by spiders, but these spiders were abnormally large and fucking both Alliance and Horde women. Alarivi began to struggle, striving to break free from the webs that held her, but found herself failing, and soon she'd be greeted by the leg of a spider that captured her chin and tugged her head to face him. "You see that?" he said in a sweet voice, then gestured toward the ground below, where a spider had dominated a blood elf female and had put what appeared to be a tube-like, clear appendage inside of her. Alarivi was to watch as the stomach of the elf grew large and bumpy, but the elf didn't seem to mind. In fact, she was moaning and begging for the spider to continue. Alarivi tried to look away from the horror, but she couldn't. "That is what you are going to do for me. Consider it an honor, princess. You are now a sex slave to a spider king." Alarivi laughed, but found her throat dry with worry. "What's going on down there? Why am I here? And what do you mean, sex slave?" she hissed, writhing in the webs once more. The larger male spider sighed. "Let me inform you why nobody comes here. It is because we rape women, and we do it for our survival. The eggs need 10 minutes of complete warmth, and as you can see, we're not warm. And then they are forced out of the woman's system and immediately begin to hatch afterwards. The men make the eggs. The women are forced to accept hundreds by the load and then orgasm them out, unless they want a deadlier fate. We don't have any women. They all died," he stated flatly, and then began to undo the top part of the webbing so that he could crawl into the now cocoon-like web with Alarivi. "And you, my dear, are going to be my personal slave for that." "Like hell I am," she hissed, and began to struggle furiously. But from the spider came more webbing, which held Alarivi down, and Alarivi then realized that all of her clothing was gone, a feeling she was used to, and that she was completely left open for the spider to take. Considering this is a porn story, that's obviously just what he did. Slowly, from beneath the spider, would a long, about 2-foot tube-looking thing seemed to almost writhe its way out. It was green but see-through and very thick. She'd have to use both hands to grasp it, but she couldn't, seeing as how she was webbed down quite securely with a horny spider atop of her. Chapter 2. And it'd be there that the slutty Draenei found herself being taken by the monster of a spider. He would slowly force the phallic tube inside of her tight, wet pussy, And even though Alarivi cried in disgust and begged for him to stop, he continued to stretch her walls by slowly feeding the tube into her. She could feel the spiderwebs tighten, pulling her legs further apart so that the Spider King could climb atop of her and try, yet fail, to shove all of his shaft within her. She could feel it throbbing inside her walls. The thought of being raped by a spider not only turned her on, but made her moan and squirm in pleasure as he continued to push into her, stopping after he got a good 7 inches in. But the Spider King wasn't pleased. No, he wanted more, and thus began the violent screaming, unable to decide if she enjoyed this or resented it. She'd arch her back as the Spider King began to grind harder, teasing her G-spot without even knowing it. Her inner walls tightened, and suddenly she released in a cry, body shaking a bit as she squirted all over the tube within her. Then, without warning, the spider thrust at a good time and began to make odd sounds. He continued to thrust, and the Draenei could see the mound of eggs slowly sliding down his penis and into her womb. The feeling was intense, and her toes curled as she screamed again in pure pleasure as egg after egg began to fill her. Slowly her stomach would expand as the Spider King relentlessly stuffed eggs into her belly. She gasped and moaned, struggling to free herself as she saw it. Her belly grow rigid and bumpy from having so many of the 4-inch diameter eggs inside of her. Suddenly she'd be empty of his tube, and the Spider King had some wicked smirk on his face. Now lay there for a moment while I undo your legs, and prepare to give birth. The newly pregnant with eggs Draenei began to choke and gag on her own sick, twisted delight. Suddenly she was free from her bonds, to an extent. Squat, and squat she did. Her arms held high above her head as she shifted and moaned, her eyes heavy with pleasure and disgust. "Oh no," she yelled, squirming madly as the first of the multitude of eggs slid from her body with a few pushes. It would come out in a cum-like ooze, so that it would not harm the egg or the mother too badly. Alarivi would be shuddering and squirming for about an hour, as each thick egg slid from her womb and her vagina slowly and very, very delightfully. When that hour was over, the Draenei could no longer feel her legs or her pussy, as if it had been abused so much within that hour, not to mention she doubted if she could ever orgasm ever again. Beneath her would be a nest of about 50 or so pale, green, spotted eggs. Her Spider King was still there, lurking behind her and often hugging her about the waist with two of his larger legs. She would shift, making some odd murmur sound as she lay against him and closed her eyes for a moment. "Don't fall asleep just yet," he grinned sadistically. And then Alarivi would be swarmed by the already hatching spiderlings. They crawled along her body, desperate to get to her breasts first, and the two mated would be on there for just a moment until swarmed by the other 48 hatchlings trying to suck away at the milk inside her bouncing, huge breasts. "Ugh!" Alarivi squealed, wiggling in delight as their tiny maws sucked at her nipples quite heavily. Her eyes closed as her body once again released her sweet fluids all over the web and spiders. Oddly enough, Alarivi could orgasm more. Go, whore. But there would be too much pleasure for the poor Draenei to take, and she could see the world around her starting to fade black. Even if she passed out, she could feel the hungry sucking of her new litter of baby spiders. Alarivi would soon awake, no longer suspended or in the webbing. In fact, she appeared to be very alone except for the multitude of eggs that lay around her. Some were hatching, others were already hatched. Either way, Alarivi found this her perfect opportunity to escape. The Draenei peered around the dark cave, slowly making her way towards the exit, trying to be the sneakiest person alive right now. See, the more she looked, the more she found herself surrounded by sleeping spiders and female humanoids alike. Her eyes were stuck on a very odd sight as she managed to make it about 100 yards from the cave's exit. There was a female night elf, with arms wrapped around a spider, who in return held on to her as they slept. Except his dick was deep inside her stomach, and the night elf was so small you could practically see the outline of it within her. It was both cute and disgusting. Alarivi was soon stepping into the light, surrounded by its warm embrace, so she took a few steps, and then crunch. Everything in the world woke up as she snapped the twig that awkwardly lay in the middle of the exitway. So, someone's taking to leaving, hissed a very pissed-off Spider King. Alarivi blinked, paling a bit. I was just looking outside, I promise, she lied, awkwardly shifting as she wiggled her way back into the cave's dark embrace. I believe you deserve punishment of some sort. What? Alarivi stuttered, still in a daze and shock. You're going to be punished, and, of course, we have the perfect punishment for you. With that, Alarivi embraced Spider King. With that, the Spider King embraced Alarivi with his forelegs and drew her back into the cave. Alarivi was pulled back through the hatching and then further into some dark recess within the cave. There was a curved pathway and pitched blackness. But the spider could clearly see, and even if he couldn't, he knew his way around. Alarivi was dumped into a small room, giving a soft whine of pain upon landing on the cold, hard floor. There was the sound of a metal door clicking shut. The spiders had doors? Alarivi shrugged. Not even if he could. Thinking about it too hard. Chances are, if the spiders were sentient and could talk, they could probably construct metal doors. Alarivi's thought process was interrupted when she tried to move her hand to stand up. Her hands were bound together by spider webbing. What the hell? When did that get there? She tried to move her legs, but those were bound too. She struggled for a minute before lying on the floor. What kind of punishment was this? Perverted spiders always did something sexy. It was in the convenient mental rule book. Why, hello there, beautiful, moaned a voice behind her. Alarivi started in surprise. Sounded elven. She could hear two of them directly above her. Oh no, she feared. What were they going to do to her? And that's the end of it.